r/AskMen. What made you walk out of an interview? I was being interviewed for a business analyst position and the interview was already strange. They had me waiting for 40 minutes and then the interview was done by two people. One asked, if I could be any animal, what would it be? Now, I believed this to be an extremely odd question for such a role, and I responded that I wasn't sure how my connection with an animal would apply to this job. Further into the interview, I was asked what the difference between a data scientist and a data analyst was, and I said the most textbook answer I could and said I'd consider a data analyst like a nurse and a data scientist like a doctor. The analyst will have lots of experience with front-end analysis and observation, while the scientist will be more adept at in-depth wise, predictions, etc. Which is why one is paid X2-3 the other. The woman who asked stated how extremely offended she was at my statement, and rambled for about 5 minutes. At this point, I stood up, said thank you for your time, but I'm going to pursue other options and left. I went to an interview and was ushered into an office that clearly did not belong to the interviewer in the ill-fitting suit. After a few minutes it became clear that this marketing job was clearly a sales role. As a marketing grad who specializes in analytics, I wish people would stop listing sales jobs as marketing positions. In some places it's illegal to lie on an application. How come it's not illegal for employers to lie about the jobs they are hiring for? Companies are more difficult to prosecute than individuals. I applied for A&M account management or some such job for an insurance company when I was in desperate need for a job. There was a group information session, and it sounded kind of salesy, but I was naive and came back for an individual interview. After hearing more about what the job entailed, I realized it was completely a sales job and I wasn't interested. The interviewer, office owner, asked why I would be good for the job and I responded, honestly, I don't think I would be. She looked bewildered, and after finding a bit she started trying to sell me on the job and tell me how I could do it and what a good job it is. I declined and when she realized I was not going to take the job she tried to hook me up with her receptionist and said she was asking about me after the group interview. Very bizarre, but that's how I avoided a MLM career path for a popular insurance company with a duck mascot. Did you at least nail the receptionist? I was dumb enough to think I was interviewing for a real job, so I was also dumb enough to awkwardly scoot past the receptionist without saying a word. So we expect our employees to go above and beyond. And went on to say that basically everyone will work 60 hours a week for 40 hours of pay. See ya. I would have asked what the salary is and then asked for 50% more plus another week of vacation. I don't mind 60-hour weeks, it's getting paid to do it that raises questions. Honestly, I love a 60-hour week when 20 hours of overtime pay hits my bank account. When I was in high school, the White Castle down the street was hiring. I lived in a bad area, and it was open 24/7. I went in and applied, but let them know that I was in school and couldn't do overnights because of that, and because of the area. They assured me that this was fine, and that they could get me in after school and out before midnight. I go in for interview/orientation on a Tuesday afternoon around 6, and they've got the schedule set. I'm on after orientation, 9 PM to 3 AM or some shit. So, I pull the shift lead aside like, hey, I was told that, because of my school situation, I wouldn't be on overnights. I'm on the schedule for overnight tonight. I have school tomorrow, and I wasn't even aware I'd have a shift today. I was told it was just orientation. How do we fix this? She goes, well, everybody gotta work overnight. It is what it is. I went, gotcha. Thanks for your time. Took off the apron, handed it to her, and left her and the rest of the orientation group, who were stunned. Takes balls to do that in front of everyone. It takes an ounce of self-respect. Other people won't respect you if you don't respect yourself. I noticed a sleeping bag and the interviewer said they get a lot of long nights and it beats driving home. Nope. Well, if it would come with complimentary pizza and sushi, it's still not worth it. Value your own free time. I was a crew chief in a warehouse at my previous job. The interviewer read this on my resume and thought it said crew chef, and asked me if this was a joke. I politely corrected him and explained my previous position. He didn't believe me, but continued with the interview anyways. As the interview went on, I quickly realized that the interviewer was in fact one of the supervisors in this facility, and that not only did he fundamentally not understand the freight industry, but he could barely read or spell. I knew there was no way I could work under this guy, so I stood up, thanked him for his time and left. He told me I was an idiot and was throwing away an incredible opportunity. I didn't even turn around to acknowledge him. It felt like a bad comedy sketch. I had this happen with a teacher at the community college once. He gave me a bad grade on my first paper, which surprised me because I got stellar scores in App English in high school. Turns out I was writing above his reading level, and he hated that. I remember getting a bad grade on a poem I wrote in freshman year of high school. 2 words were circled in red, and off to the side she had wrote, "You can't just make up words." I asked her what she meant, because I knew these words were actual words. She said she couldn't find them in the dictionary, so they must not exist, and I should just rewrite the poem and not argue with her. So I got a dictionary and showed her these 2 words were, in fact, real words. All she did was change the grade to a passing and told me to go sit down, no apology or anything. The 2 words were vigil and sigil. I'm sorry, you can't make up words in poetry. I had an interview last year. Teaching gig. The principal in charge of the interview was an hour late. That alone irritated me, but he showed up, and we started the interview. 5 minutes in, and he says, "Hey, let's walk around the campus, I'll show you around." That wasn't a big deal, we just walked and talked. The problem is that every time he saw someone, he'd stop and spend at least 5 minutes talking to them, regardless of whether or not I was done answering questions. I was there 2.5 hours for that interview. I said no. For some people that sounds like a dream. If the boss doesn't give much of a duck, sounds like you'd get a free ride and a relaxing flexible work if the pay was good. It's an inner city school, heavily impoverished, in possibly the poorest state in the union. If the boss doesn't give a duck in a school like that, everyone is ducked. I went into an interview with a company when I was in college because they got my name off Indeed. There was a room they filled with 30 of us listening to what could only have been an MLM scheme. After 45 minutes of talking about how awesome the company is, how much fun they have, and how much money they make, and without any talk of what the actual job was, I stood up and was the first person to leave. About half of the room left with me. The Enviduran system isn't a pyramid. It's a reverse funnel. Not a pyramid scheme. Turn it upside down. I was interviewing for a software development job that I didn't apply for, but contacted me. The job description was utterly ridiculous. It had a literal 30-something languages and technologies that it required. The job also paid below entry level for my field, but wanted above what a senior dev does. I didn't want the job, but I figured I'd interview for practice. I only matched 5 out of the 30-ish languages/technologies they wanted, but since they called me, I figured they saw something in my resume they wanted. Well, I found out shortly into the interview that they actually did want everything on the list. The lady interviewing me was offended that I showed up to the interview without matching their silly qualifications. I politely reminded them they contacted me and thanked them for their time and left. The job was still open for another 2 years after that day. I hadn't checked after that, so who knows, maybe it's still open. I applied for a middle school science teacher position in a pretty bad inner city school district. Sat down in the principal's office, and she had my resume, application, all my supplemental paperwork in a folder. When I walked in, she closed the folder, moved it to the side and said, "I'm sure you're very qualified. I haven't even read through this. I'm going to offer you this position on the spot because you're male and over 6 feet tall. I don't need a teacher, I need someone to control the kids in the classroom. Will you take the job?" Thanked her for her time and couldn't get out of there fast enough. Well, at least she was honest, I guess. Geez, that's bad. Bad doesn't even begin to describe how much of a hell teachers have to put up in inner city schools. It's pretty much Dark Souls gang squads in class. Was contacted for a position in a nearby town, put on the suit, etc, and got there about 20 minutes early. There were 4 other people in the reception area, no worries, I was confident in my skills. Soon enough I met with my interviewer. We went over my credentials and background, and I was asked career relevant questions. Then about 15 minutes into the interviewer said something which I found a little odd, so I asked for clarification. It was then that I was told it was for a sales job, specifically a cold calling sales job. They started extolling the virtues of a career change. I said something along the lines of this not being the position I was led to believe, and left the room. As I was leaving, one of the interviewers made a remark about me making a big mistake. I stopped in the lobby on the way out and made the general announcement that whatever job they were here to interview for, it's actually a cold call sales job. About 2/3 of the people in the room got up and left with me, and I got a bunch of glares from the workers there. When I got back outside, I parked my car near the entrance and told anyone who looked like they were going in for an interview that it was a cold sales job. I was there for about 45 minutes before a police car rolled up and had me move along. One of the people in the office heard what I was doing and called them. "Thank you for your service.